Finally, things come to an end. That was the decisive battle. That is the appearance of a hero chosen by the gods. Someone tells Noel that they had reached their limit. They plead with him not to die, but he says everything is in his hands now. Then they teleport out of that place. Only he remained there. It was up to him and the Demon King to decide who would emerge victorious. In a castle, someone prays for divine protection. Everything suddenly turned dark. He wakes up startled and sees a skeleton beside him. Perhaps it was a basement, and he had been buried alive, so it was better to leave quickly. Using teleportation, he moves to the outside. Everything had been completely destroyed. There must have been some kind of connection between the castle and the demon's power. This was dangerous. Finally, he removes his helmet and breathes the fresh air. The Demon King was defeated thanks to divine protection, until he notices a glow emanating from his sword, which begins to grow and envelops him completely. From this intense light, what appears to be a saint emerges. However, he quickly recognizes her. She is the goddess. Looking at him, she thanks Noel for still being alive. It is difficult for her to enter the Demon King's territory. She wouldn't have known of their existence if not for Noel's consciousness. She said he had been unconscious for 6 whole months, which was worrying. He has no idea how this is possible. He immediately remembers his companions and wants to know if they are all well. She then says that Noel's friends are safe. Hearing this, he feels immediately relieved, but the goddess places her hand on the hero's face. She states that his position is not favorable at all. In his land, Prince Cain Lavania was considered the true hero who defeated the Demon King. At first, he doesn't understand this news. He assumes that everyone in his team must have returned to their lands and finds it strange that things have taken this turn. Following the king's orders, his companions act as if Noel never existed. The shaman Aina now works for the king. The knight Uter is an army officer, owns a residence in the capital, and even has a harem. Meanwhile, the Saint Stella married Prince Cain. They all changed their positions, and she imagines it must be difficult for him to hear about this, but those were their rewards. He still can't believe Stella got married. But the goddess confirms it again. It's shocking, as he has known her since childhood. Even more unexpectedly, she married the prince. There was a reason the king did all of this. The hero who defeats the Demon King becomes their beacon of hope. If he dies, not just the citizens, but all humanity would be in danger, or so the king believed. The hero is a banner representing hope. Thus, this was done for the benefit of everyone. Noel asked if that was truly the reason why Cain replaced him in the story. The goddess understands this excuse. As for the masses, peace is the most important thing. But there is a downside to it all. Noel is still alive, and even though he returned to his land, the truth about the real hero will be buried forever. Noel looks at his helmet, lying on the ground. The goddess says this is concealed to prevent revenge from the Demon Kingdom. This was the king's order, but there's something very suspicious about how he governs the nation. She recalls his words, saying it's a blessing to bring the hero to light. He should do his best to fulfill his missions. Noel endured all these hardships to protect the people and his land. Now he is treated as if he never existed and doesn't understand the meaning of it all. Approaching him, the goddess wants to know what he will do now. Honestly, he doesn't even know where to begin thinking. For now, he just wants to calm himself a bit more. But at first, he wishes to live peacefully and return to his homeland. After that, he will think about the future. He continues his journey until he is greeted at the city gates by a guard. His life from now on had changed, and for him, the goddess wishes all the best. Someone says Noel must have come from far away. He is sitting down for a meal and learns that Stella is pregnant. The news is quite recent, and the man mentions that it was his wife who did that decoration. All the cities are holding festivals to celebrate the saint's pregnancy. He resumes walking while thinking about Stella's motherhood. Now that he has become someone who doesn't exist, he can't even send his congratulations to her. Suddenly, a strong explosion happens right in front of him, making him wonder what that is. In that direction lies the village. Knowing this, he quickened his steps to find out what was happening, until his eyes landed on something surprising. There's a monster there, a hydra, and it's fighting a pointy-eared girl who is injured. Almost incapacitated, the girl cannot do anything to stop the creature's next attack. She closes her eyes, unwilling to see what will happen. However, as time passes, she realizes she is still alive. Now she is in the arms of a stranger who is protecting her. Returning home, the hero did what heroes do. The hydra is furious about what happened. Without wasting time, the hero quickly cuts off one of its heads. He observes carefully through the blood. On the ground, the girl can only admire the strength of the stranger. It had been incredible. He single-handedly dealt with the hydra. He notices that the girl is exhausted and asks if she has any severe injuries. Her response was negative, followed by her gratitude for what he did. Soon, Noel noticed something. What she is wearing around her neck is a slave collar. She confirms this because she is a battle slave. She was given a mission, and to ensure she wouldn't escape, they placed that collar around her neck. To her surprise, Noel said he would remove the collar. This immediately made her hesitant, but with a simple spell, the collar fell from her neck, leaving her quite astonished. She says that it's a special collar that can only be removed by the contractor. Noel remarks that she also has a slave marking and offers to remove it for her. Without her clothes, she reveals the marking, while thinking he is truly very powerful. She was told that this marking is unique and that not even all the mages in the kingdom would be able to remove it. Noel listened to this without taking it seriously. He extends his hand and a magic circle appears. The cancellation process begins and the markings start to fade. It didn't take long before there was no trace of the marking on her body. The girl can't believe that something so simple has now made her free. Her emotion is so overwhelming that she begins to cry. Thanking the young man, she says she is in his debt. She immediately asks for his name as she doesn't know it yet. With a smile, he says his name is Sarah. In response, he introduces himself as Noel Vega and says he is very pleased to meet her. Not knowing exactly what to say, Sarah also says it's a pleasure to have met him. He's unsure if they are heading to the same destination, but Sarah thanks him for the clothes she received, while Noel apologized for having to make her wear them. But as soon as they reach the city, he will arrange proper women's clothing for her. However, Sarah says that's impossible because it's a ghost town. Hearing this, Noel is shocked, but it's the absolute truth. Demons attacked the place and the king sealed the entire area because of it. Walking through the city, they arrive at what used to be his home. Since she is his first guest in a long time, he says it's best he tidies things up a bit. At first, she didn't understand what Noel meant by that, but using magic, he began to rebuild the house. By the end, the house's facade looked as if it were new. Sitting at the table, he asks what her mission in that city was, but Sarah struggles to find the words. Noel asks if it's something difficult to say, but she denies it. Then she decides to tell him. She went to the city to fulfill the king's order. Her task was to erase any trace of Noel Vega, who could hardly believe what he was hearing. He then asked her why the king would order that, but Sarah didn't know how to answer. Faced with this, he wanted to know if she was the king's slave, to which she replied not exactly. Her master was someone who contributed to defeating the demon king, but is a despicable person. Hearing this, Noel knows it could only be one of his former allies. Intrigued, he asks her to say the name of this person. Her master's name is Goodall. Sarah asks if they know each other, and Noel says yes. Sarah continues, saying that both Goodall and Prince Cain are unpleasant. For them, it was no problem to empty the city to erase Noel's traces, even though they are the knight and the hero. Hearing those words, Noel reveals that he is the true hero, leaving her stunned. It was he who defeated the demon king, but the king changed the narrative, so the deed would be attributed to the prince. With the image of the hero's armor in mind, she asks if it's really him, to which Noel realizes she might find it hard to believe. But for her, it's plausible, understanding that the king's order was to erase all traces of the true hero, not to mention that Noel is abnormally strong. She was about to continue speaking, but her stomach growled audibly. This left her visibly embarrassed. Knowing she was hungry, Noel said he would prepare something to eat, and Sarah offered to help him. Going to the well, he noticed there was no water, which was strange because the well was supposed to have divine protection, so there shouldn't be a shortage of water, not even the sound of it. Given the situation, he decided to check the sanctuary. There he found seals used by demons, so strong that they could contain a god, and they could only be broken by demons. It seemed that these had been placed after the attack. Unbothered, he said they needed to remove the seals to open the well. From the well emerged a young woman, the spirit of water, who was happy to have returned. Once freed, she thanked the hero for breaking the seals that had imprisoned her. Noel was surprised because she knew him, and the young woman said only the hero could remove the seals so easily, as he carried the goddess of protection. Smiling, Noel said he didn't expect anyone to recognize him as the hero. She revealed herself to be the goddess of the earth, and just because she was sealed didn't mean she could notice it. Sarah thought she was too small to be a goddess, and the young woman responded that she wasn't that short. However, she started inspecting the girl more closely. This startled Sarah, who feared the goddess thought she was a demon. Noel reassured her, saying Sarah was a kind demon. Hearing this, the goddess was surprised that he already knew her true nature. She asked did he save her even knowing this, and Noel said she needed help no matter what she was. Those words made her genuinely happy. The goddess then formally introduced herself as Aqua, the goddess of the earth. Noel and Sarah also introduced themselves to her, and Aqua's stomach growled again. Aqua admitted she was hungry, and Noel teased her, saying even gods need to eat. He asked if she could produce water, and the goddess said yes, quickly filling a bucket at Noel's request. With the table set, he hoped the food would please them. Sarah apologized for only being useful and hunting and nothing else, but Noel told her not to worry. Aqua asked what kind of herb it was, and Noel said it was wild grass. Sarah enjoyed the taste very much. With disdain for her, Aqua said even demons have foolish palates, but decided to give the food a chance. She found the taste to her liking. She asked if this was a hero's ability, but he replied he had only cooked and nothing more. Noel had been thinking a lot since arriving about the abandoned buildings and the complete absence of residents in the village. Sarah overheard that they had migrated to another place. Aqua was happy they had migrated but hoped they would return one day. But Noel said that was highly unlikely. The goddess admitted feeling very lonely because of this. Then Noel patted her head, prompting her to ask what he was doing. He said he had returned and that this was his village. The goddess then asked if he would become a common villager, even though he was a hero. But he wasn't a common villager, as he could work with the strength of 100 men. Not to mention it would be wonderful if the village could come alive again. Sarah said she would help with that, and the hero couldn't wait to count on Aqua's help. Giving a thumbs up, Aqua said to leave it to her. as she was the earth goddess and a friend of the neighborhood. First, they needed to do something about the fields, and the goddess said they had to make the plants grow again. Creating water, she declared this land would no longer be barren. Soon the ground was covered with grass, which amazed them. Vegetables began to sprout one after the other, to Aqua's delight. Noel said plants don't grow that easily. Pointing to one of them, Aqua asked what that was. Then, immediately, Sarah and Noel were amazed, and Aqua said they could worship her now if they wanted. But it wasn't just her power. Other earth gods had helped. They all wanted to assist the hero, and Noel said he was the former hero. Former or not, it didn't matter. Aqua said, as all of them wanted to contribute, and she was no different. She only asked that he fulfill a promise of reviving the village. Determined, he said he would do his best. Now they needed to start collecting herbs to eat, which didn't please Aqua much, as she wanted to eat real vegetables already. The sun pierces through the forest grass, and a hero holds a goat in his hands. He didn't imagine he'd find one there, but it's an excellent find. It was Aqua who said this, now happy because they'll have milk every day. On his way back, Noel came across something unusual, a girl lying unconscious on the ground. He was startled and tried to wake her up with words, asking if she was okay. When she didn't respond, he used a healing spell. Even so, the girl didn't wake up. Since he couldn't leave her there, abandoned, he picked her up to take her to a safe place. Arriving home, he laid her on a bed and stayed by her side. After some time, the girl woke up. Awake, she asked where she was. Aqua, happy to see her awake, said she'd bring her some water. With a glass in hand, she refreshed herself. Noel told her she hadn't opened her eyes, and he thought it might be a serious illness or something like that. She then explained that many things had happened, and she had been resting in a nearby village. She hadn't opened her window for a long time and had been fascinated by something strange, which made her wander through the forest. At least that's what she remembers, and she hadn't eaten for a long time. So Noel said he'd prepare something for her. He wonders if Aqua being freed changed the atmosphere of the place. As water flows through the devastated land, it must have some effect, especially since she's also the goddess of the earth. After their conversation, the girl thanked them for saving her. With a bit more strength, she helped Aqua milk the goat while being watched by Noel. She seems to be a good girl and gets along very well with Aqua. The girl agrees with him, but Noel notices something's on her mind. She says it's about Goodle. If she doesn't return, someone else will surely be sent and their village will be discovered. However, Noel says that if that happens, they'll think of something. Soon, the little girl appears with glasses of milk for them. As the pointy-eared girl drinks her milk, Aqua invites Sanya to race her to the river. Noel warns her not to push too hard as Sanya is still recovering from her weakness. But Sanya replies that even in her state, her mental scars are behind her. Aqua wants to know what wound she's referring to and offers to talk to her about it. Immediately, the girl holds back her words and her eyes fill with tears. The reason for her sadness stems from the broken engagement with her fiancé. It was the only topic in the capital. Everyone talked about it, and she could no longer bear it. So she ran away, and as she finished talking, she burst into tears, being comforted by the others. Composing herself, she apologized for being dramatic about the matter, but said venting made her feel better. Aqua wants to know if her fiancé was someone famous. She says yes, and that they probably know him because he's the hero who defeated the Demon King. Aqua immediately jabs Noel playfully, but he says she already knows he's not her fiancé. This leads him to ask the girl if her fiancé is Prince Cain. She confirms it, explaining that he ended up marrying the saint who accompanied him during the demon subjugation. In fact, the two even have a child now. Sanya cries, saying she never even held hands with him. They comfort her again, saying Cain is no good, and Noel comments that Sanya is very beautiful. This statement immediately makes the girls turn to look at him. Noel adds that of all people, she was engaged to the false hero. This leaves Sanya confused. After hearing the whole story, she realizes Cain isn't the hero, and Aqua says the true hero is Noel. But Noel remarks that it might be too much for her to process now. However, Sanya says that Aqua is a goddess, and her word is credible enough. Looking around, Sanya says the village is beautiful and asks if she can stay there. The true hero, beyond not taking any credit, is living a modest life. This deeply moves her. Noel returns to the village but wonders if her family won't worry about her. She doesn't know if they'll worry or not, but says she'll ask for permission. If that's the case, they will accept her. This made her very happy. After that, someone says they're ready. The pointy-eared girl wants to know if it turned out well. The girls compliment her because Sarah is a woman and deserves to feel good in her clothes. Noel didn't expect this talent from Sanya, who is an excellent seamstress. With a smile on her face, she says she'll do her best to help the village. Noel says she looks much better now compared to when she first woke up, and indeed she's much more radiant, as if filled with hope. A knight comes across the destroyed body of the Hydra. He observes apprehensively, as whoever did that must be an even more dangerous monster. Meanwhile, Noel continues working on the land. The knight arrives and comments that this must have been Ghost Town, but it has started to develop again, and Noel hears the man. He quickly recognizes him as Jerzus, who is surprised to find Noel there. In conversation, Jerzus explains he is searching for the daughter of the cavalry commander, who has gone missing, which puts Sanya on alert. Finally, he sees her and is surprised, and the young woman remarks that it's been a while since they last saw each other. He mentions that the entire village is in turmoil over her disappearance, and she apologizes for it. Noel assumes her family must be influential since she was once engaged to the prince, making her the daughter of the cavalry commander. She confirms, saying that Kusher is her father. Aqua asks if this man is important, and Noel explains that he is simply the most important man in the army, saying everyone is worried about her. Jerzes asks her to return with him, but she firmly states that she doesn't want to and intends to live there. This prompts Jerzes to turn to Noel, but Noel says Sanya will request her family's permission to live there, which only complicates things further for Jerzes. Sarah announces her return home, unaware of Jerzes' presence. She is happy because she managed to hunt a large animal, but Jerzes is fixated on the woman. On his way out, they reminisce about the times they used to go on adventures together. His new superior had assigned him a task, which was why he had come through there. He learned that Sanya had disappeared from the village, causing quite an uproar. Noel realizes that Jerzes prioritized her disappearance over the mission he had been assigned, typical of the knight. However, the knight wants to know if Noel is still the same for protecting someone like that pointy-eared girl. After all, she is a demon. It's a heartless job, but he has work to do. Seeing that Jerzes had drawn his sword, Noel asks what's wrong. She is a runaway slave, and Jerzes wants to know why she's with him. Noel explains there were many circumstances. His job is to confirm what she has done, and Noel's response will determine his next actions. Noel states that he knew about her work and circumstances, but decided to protect her anyway. Jerzes' superior is someone who fought alongside the hero, someone who rose to the top of the army in the blink of an eye. Strong enough to be the next leader of the cavalry, and Noel realizes he must be talking about Gudel. If a task assigned by his superior isn't completed, things will get complicated. Without hesitation, Noel says he is prepared for that. The knight then asks if Noel will maintain this stance even if the entire army turns against him. Fearlessly, Noel says yes. The knight moves and Noel watches him with determination. He assumes a combat stance with his sword, but soon Jerzes sighs deeply, saying he understands how resolute Noel is. He points out that Sarah is a slave and even wears a collar, but Noel says he removed it. This leaves Jerzes stunned because it should have been impossible, but Noel is the hero. These words shock him. Now without his armor and seeing the collar, Jerzes asks Noel if he is really the hero. With the collar on the table, Noel asks if he still doesn't believe it. The man capable of removing that collar is indeed no ordinary person, but Noel insists that he is just a farmer now. Intrigued, Jerzes wants to know why the true hero is in a place like that. Sitting at the table, Noel tells the whole story. Jerzes slams his cup down and deeply angered by this injustice. He already found it suspicious that they had tasked a demon with the village's destruction, not imagining that such a huge secret was hidden there. Noel wants to ask something of Jerzes now. Sarah asks if Sanya will now return to her village, but Sanya says she will do so to explain the situation, and Sarah wants to know who Jerzes is. Noel says he is an old friend who came looking for Sanya. Concluding the conversation, he offers to help her with her work, which she gratefully accepts. Aqua tugs at his sleeve, wanting to know when the girl will return. But since she needs her father's permission, it might take some time. She asks if Jerzes will accompany her, but Noel says no, because he has a task to complete. Inside a fortress, it is said that the matter has already been resolved. The slave was attacked by a hydra and died in combat. Gudel called her useless and heard that she was one of the strongest in the Demon King's army. And indeed, it is difficult to reach that area because of the hydra. Placing the collar on the table, he said it was all he could collect and that he would now be leaving. Gudel still hasn't managed to erase all traces of Noel, but as long as the hydra remains there, no one will be able to reach the location. It was Noel who instructed him to do this and to use the collar as proof of Sarah's death. That way, Gudel would stop searching for her. Sarah is very happy and grateful for what Noel and Jerzes have done for her. Meanwhile, Aqua eagerly awaits Sanya's return. On her first night in the village, Aqua takes up the entire bed. Noel tells Sarah she can use the remaining bed and he'll sleep on the floor. Then, he goes to the living room. But Sarah says that won't do. He's the owner of the house, so she should be the one to sleep in the living room. However, if he doesn't mind, they could share the bed. Sarah clearly doesn't see any problem with this. Thus, the two slept in the same bed, but she couldn't fall asleep. At dawn, Noel asked if she had rested well since her face told a different story. Aqua is upset that they can't use the house's oven. Noel explains that while it looks fine on the outside, it operates with magic and there's nothing inside it. He says it's impossible to fix the magical components just by renovating, but she asks if he can repair it anyway. Without a second thought, he says yes, which makes her very happy. Jerzes enters the kitchen, asking what they're doing. Noel thanks him for what he did regarding Gudel, and the knight replies that it was Noel's request, so it couldn't be ignored. He mentions that a bastard has become a court mage and is part of the hero's team. This is Aina, and rumors say she's quite reclusive. This surprises Noel because the Aina he remembers was very proud. Sanya is in a flower-filled field, and there's another woman there with her. She asks if the woman is from the village, but the woman says she's not, though a dear friend of hers, now gone, was from there. There's a gravestone there. Sanya offers to take her home for tea as she's also new to the area. She returns home and announces her arrival. They welcome her, and Noel immediately recognizes Aina. She is shocked to see her friend, leaving Sanya surprised to realize they already knew each other. She She let the bouquet of flowers she was carrying fall to the ground. Emotional, she realized he was still alive. She immediately placed her hands on the ground. Prostrated, she apologized to him, for she had betrayed him. Slightly embarrassed, he asked her to stand up. He quickly asked if she was apologizing about the story of the false hero. She explained that they had been persuaded by the king that it was the best choice, thinking of the people. Aqua confronts her, saying that Aina also received a high-ranking position. Noel remarks that she worked hard during the Demon King's subjugation and that rewards for that are fair. Even so, Aina says most of the effort was Noel's, as he was the one who truly defeated the Demon King. He then told her to sit down and explain what happened to her, as she wasn't like this before. In the past, she was very confident, even assigning Noel to handle meals. He also wanted to know why she had become reclusive, as a mage in her position should serve as a guide. She was surprised he knew that and assumed his skills allowed him to discern her rank. However, she soon found out she couldn't use battle magic anymore. What was most important now were daily techniques for everyday use, as the Demon King had been subdued. That wasn't what she had expected. Soon, she began to feel completely useless. For the subjugation, she had only learned battle magic, neglecting other techniques. Court mages were only recruited for purposes unrelated to her specialty. She became reclusive in her home and started studying, but she soon realized she had no talent for it. Noel asked if she had run away and ended up there, but there was something more important for her to tell him. The narrative of the false hero was planned from the start, which left Noel distraught. After the Demon King was defeated, there was a plan to assassinate Noel. These words hit him hard. She theorizes this was done to make the prince the hero. Outraged, he asked if she had known this from the beginning, but she only learned about it recently, as there are things only mages of her rank have access to. There was a confidential document with this information. Noel realizes that not returning to the capital was the right decision. Aina came there to apologize to him. Her life changed after learning about this plan, and she had no memories of the true hero Noel. She wanted at the very least to make a tombstone and place some flowers for him. But she felt she owed him much more and was remorseful for what she had done. He took her outside and showed her a destroyed house. There were still many ruins in the village, and if she wanted to apologize, she should fix all of them. But Aina told him that she didn't know how to do that. In front of her, he began using his own magic. He repaired the house, leaving Aina astonished, as not even in the court of mages could anyone achieve such perfection. He offered to teach her. This left her speechless. In the meantime, she would stay at his house. With tears streaming down her face, she thanked Noel. Aqua appeared, tugging at his clothes, asking if there wasn't something he should have fixed before that, so he asked for Aina's help. Inside the house, a delicious aroma filled the air as Sanya had made cookies. She asked him to call Noel and the others, as it was tea time. Noel stood with his sword in hand, facing a knight. The knight lunged at the hero, who had to act. Their swords clashed violently. The knight wanted to test Noel's resolve. They continued battling, and the knight sighed. Sanya immediately recognized him as her father, but Jerzis stopped her from going to them. The girl wanted to know why they were fighting, and Jerzis, rubbing his forehead, said some things had happened. They sat at the table, and the commander thanked Noel for saving his daughter. But Noel said it was nothing, and that she was even helping with the work. This irritated the commander. He couldn't believe his daughter was working, but Noel explained they were sure on labor. Now he thought Noel wanted Sanya there as a servant. Noel tried to explain that she had volunteered to stay, but the commander slammed his fist on the table. He then invited Noel outside and told him to bring his sword. Jerzis was apprehensive, but the commander insisted that if there was more to be said, it should be done with swords, as is the knight's way. Now the two were competing to see who was the stronger man. The commander acknowledged that Jerzis had been right. It was now up to Noel to use his skills to strike, as the commander wielded a blade given to him by the king himself. Since it had come to this, Noel decided not to hold back and advanced on the elder without mercy. The commander's sword seemed like glass as it shattered to pieces. Noel apologized, admitting he had gone too hard. After their display of masculinity, they were back inside, and the commander said he hadn't expected someone like Noel to be hiding there. Any country would want someone like him, and he wondered why Noel was hiding in a deserted village. Noel explained that many things had happened, and now he had things to do there. If they had met earlier, he might have escorted him to the knight's order. Noel thanked him for the kind words while the commander enjoyed the food. Finding it delicious, he asked if all the vegetables had been grown there, refreshing like freedom and nourishing like a nurse's care. It was tastier than an extramarital affair, and Jerzis confirmed he came there just to eat as well. Even the water was excellent thanks to the goddess of blessing. He asked what the dish was, and Sanya said it was a pie she had made because he had said he wanted to eat one. This surprised him, but she explained she had learned to make it long ago from her mother and the maids. She had wanted to bake one for his birthday, but he was never present on those dates, so she never got the chance. Jerzis remarked that the commander was a highly sought-after person, and Sanya acknowledged this, saying she wasn't a child anymore. He had a job more important than his family. Noel said his job was just as important since it secured the future of those he loved. After this remark, Sanya was brought back to reality. The commander continued eating until he apologized to his daughter for making her feel lonely. However, he planned to stay with his family now and hoped she would bake more of those pies. She was stunned by his words, Meanwhile, Jerzas wondered if he had really heard that. The commander revealed he had received orders to hand over his position to Gödel, but admitted he still didn't trust him. He tried to postpone it as much as possible after learning the reason the time had come. Noel became thoughtful. Jerzas stood up in frustration, declaring that if that inept man led the army, the country would head for ruin. The commander shared a similar sentiment but said he couldn't disobey the king's orders just because he disagreed with them. But they know many things about Gödel. The commander cannot believe Gödel is so corrupt, much less that Noel is the true hero. In fact, considering his swordsmanship, it makes sense, especially since he had broken one of the commander's treasured items, which had weighed heavily on Noel's conscience. But if this is true, he can no longer hand over his position to Gödel. In the kitchen, Sarah wants to know if Noel has finished talking with him. Sania confirms he has and adds that her father has also approved of him. Now she asks if Sarah isn't worried about this. After all, they had fought each other seriously. That was her father, and if he had injured Noel. Sarah smiles at this and says that even knights need 2 teams to subdue a Hydra. And there's definitely no one here who could harm someone capable of handling a Hydra alone. This is undoubtedly a wonderful village. It's hard to believe it was a ghost town until recently, but Noel says everyone helped. The commander assumes they chose to live there because they know Noel is there. He replies that he only wants to create a peaceful village where they can all live. He recalls what they've already accomplished there. Even if they lose their homes, they'll be able to stay in this village. The commander thought it was a waste for the hero to be reclusive in such a place. But deep down, he envies Noel's dreams. And to contribute to this dream, he knows he must take action too. He tells his daughter she will always be welcome, and she replies that she'll return for more pies. Sadly, he says she can make pies at their home because there are people he wants to offer them to as well. Then he extended his hand to Noel. Shaking it firmly, he asked Noel to take care of his daughter. Sweating nervously, the young man agreed. As he prepared to mount his horse, he said he liked Noel. Hearing this, Jerzas was pleased and agreed. As they departed, they commented on how reliable the commander is, along with discussing trivial matters about the village. Sania had made more clothes for Noel and Aqua. They thanked her for the gift, and Aqua immediately wanted to try her outfit on. She found the clothes too revealing. She remarked that her undergarments were too small, which embarrassed Sarah. But Sania insisted that Aqua looked great in them. Then Noel entered the room. He was only wearing the undergarments and said it was just a sash. Sarah was utterly embarrassed and ordered him not to wear that again. Inside the palace, a woman asked Prince Cain to enjoy his drink, to which he thanked her kindness. The new village they're building is almost ready. This made her immensely happy. Seeing Stella's smile was worth the investment to complete the project quickly. Gödel stormed into the room, furious with the elder. Cain asked the reason for his anger. Gödel explained that the commander had once again delayed the succession of leadership. He claimed the commander defies royal orders and speculated that Cain was turning a blind eye because the commander is his ex-fiancée's father. But the prince insisted that wasn't true. Still furious, Gödel demanded that Cain dismiss him immediately. Cain explained that Gaichi is highly respected and a harsh removal could be disadvantageous for them. Even so, Gödel continued to pressure the prince to find ways to force the commander to relinquish his position. Then Cain's wife interjected, asking Gödel to stop being so inconvenient with the prince. Left with no choice, Gödel asked what they could do. Gaichi is very attached to the cavalry. He even said that to him it's like a family. So the woman asked what would be more important than a family bond. Intrigued, she wanted to know whom he would choose, his daughter or the cavalry, and whether that would be enough for him to abdicate his responsibilities to the army. At night, a squad observed the plantation. The order was to eliminate anyone who opposed them. They began their approach, but the leader soon asked who was there. Jerzas appeared, saying it should be him asking that. Seeing that Jerzas was alone, the leader ordered his men to take him down, but looking back, he realized the situation. All of his men were already on the ground, defeated, and soon he was attacked too. He had even used his magic. Since Jerzas fought against the Demon King, he must be cautious with humans, otherwise he could kill them. Sarah arrived with more bodies but insisted that it was Noel who did all the work. Jerzas was worried about Noel and wanted to know where he was, to which Sarah replied that he had gone to feed the goats. In the field, Noel thanked Aqua, who had been essential in identifying the invaders. She smiled brightly, asking him who he thought protects this village. She is very sensitive to malicious intentions and already imagines being congratulated by Sania. Looking at the unconscious men, Jerzas wishes they would confess why they were there, but Aina knows it won't be easy. However, Jerzas takes the responsibility upon himself. He begins talking to one of them who had woken up. He asks what brought them to a village like this but gets no response. Since he wouldn't talk, Jerzas decided he would make him confess. Aina uses her magic and says she'll help, asking how many shocks it will take for him to speak. The intruder recognizes Aina and asks what she is doing there. Surprised at being identified, she wants to know who he is. He feels honored by her recognition and begins praising her endlessly until he asks if she's a prisoner there too. Offended, she denies it and demands to know who he thinks the prisoner could be. The intruder says it's the commander's daughter, prompting everyone to look at Sania, but she firmly states that she is there of her own free will. Not wanting to believe it, he says she must have been brainwashed, but Sania asserts that even her father approved of her choice. Noel wants to hear what the man has to say, as it seems there's a misunderstanding. Inside the house, they begin listening to him. He was ordered to rescue Sania. He was told she had been brainwashed and should be placed in isolation as soon as she was rescued. Noel asks who sent them there, but the intruder doesn't have that information. Gerzis wonders what they should do, as the men might still try to attack them. But Noel says they don't need to do anything. No matter who they are or how many times they attack, they will be repelled. Gerzis notes that Noel is the only one there who can make such a statement with confidence. Then a man appears, saying there's a more efficient way to solve this problem, and he greets the hero. He says they want to help with this, but Noel has no idea who they are. The woman with him simply says they aren't bad people and that they've come from far away, and that she'd like some tea. She apologizes for how they entered while receiving the tea. Sanya is surprised by the amount of sugar the woman adds. The man accompanying her wasn't surprised at all. With everyone gathered, Gerzis wants to know who they are. He introduces himself as the third prince of the kingdom of Schwer. Hearing this, Gerzis wants to know what they're doing there, since Schwer is the largest neighboring kingdom. The prince is clear about his reason. He came to meet the true hero, Noel. Hearing this, Noel asks what he means. The prince begins his explanation, detailing the motive behind the attack they just suffered. When he finishes, they learn it was Gudel again. Gudel wants the commander's position as soon as possible, but Gerzis argues that if this happens, it won't benefit the army. Suspicious, he asks the prince if his intention is to weaken the kingdom, but the prince assures him that such a thing isn't part of his plans. However, Gerzis knows the prince's reputation as the king's right hand and a cunning strategist. Thus, he doesn't fully trust his words. Looking at him again, Gerzis asks what his true intentions are. Satya says Gerzis is right to be suspicious, but the prince isn't that kind of person. The prince then says it's an honor to meet Noel. Capable of defeating the demon king yet cast into ostracism, this kingdom clearly has no shame in its actions. He says he would like to see Noel wield a sword, but the woman silences him, calling him a fanatic for Noel. Standing, the prince says that Noel cannot even enjoy the status of a hero. However, if he came to his kingdom, that would be the least of his benefits. He would be nationally recognized for his deeds. Noel asks if his life as a hero would be guaranteed if he went with the prince. The prince confirms, adding that Noel wouldn't have to live in such a simple place or do the work of a farmer. The women living with Noel seem uneasy. Noel asks if this is really true, and the enthusiastic prince confirms it. Noel then says there's no reason for him to leave. Surprised by this response, the prince wants to know why. Noel says he doesn't care about the title of hero. What matters to him are the people there. There are people who need him, and for now, that's all he needs. Looking at Aqua, he asks if the place would be fine without him, and she confirms, adding that she wouldn't forgive him if he left. Sarah also says she wants to stay with him. This is what Noel wanted to show, leaving the prince stumbling over his words. Before he could continue speaking, the woman accompanying him said it was her turn now. Gerzis wanted to know if she was also a noble. She apologized for the delayed introduction and revealed that she was the Holy Queen Mirage, ruler of the sacred nation. She clarified that she is merely the highest-ranking executive of the church. Noel asked if there were other matters they wished to discuss. She said it wasn't the same topic but was related to protecting Sanya, which immediately caught Noel's attention. Her desire was to conquer this kingdom. Gerzis was visibly displeased by her words, but she explained that it was the royal family that would be destroyed, as they had affronted the chosen one of the gods and even attempted on his life. In a world that worships these gods, there is no greater sin. Either she was correct, Gerzis questioned whether they truly intended to oppose the king. At this very moment, the people were suffering due to the misery brought by the king. Taxes had been raised to celebrate the prince's wedding and to construct a new village, but no one dared to oppose the so-called hero. As a result, the people's resentment was greater than ever. Not to mention, the harvests were failing miserably. Noel found it hard to believe, as in their village, everything was thriving. But Mirage explained that this was thanks to the goddess present there. The sacred oracle delivered by the goddess was the peaceful life of the people. This had been entirely forgotten by the royal family, who had become corrupt and were no longer fit to rule. If a sacred nation were to intervene, it would spark a war, which is why she wished to resolve matters internally. For this reason, she had sought the help of Prince Schwartz. They had been gathering information about the kingdom and had already established connections in various places. This included individuals close to the royal family. Because of this, Mirage wished for Noel to play a role in the upcoming revolution. This left Noel deep in thought. He believed the royal family was inept, but he had no desire to leave his village. The prince urged him to consider it, as it was also a chance to avenge what had happened. Mirage added that if he won, neither he nor Sanya would have to live in isolation there. The prince asked him to think about reclaiming the glory of the hero, but Noel stated he wouldn't change his mind. No matter how much they talked, there were things they wouldn't understand. But there were things they could see only by sharing a meal together. He invited them to take a look around the village. There were skewers on a grill, and Mirage tried one. The ingredients were marvelous. Noel encouraged her to eat until she was satisfied. She pulled something off her skewer that she found bitter, admitting she had a childlike palate. The prince remarked that it was indeed a lively meal. Everyone was gathered, even those who had attempted to invade the village. Sarah commented on how wonderful it was to have everyone together, smiling and enjoying themselves. The prince glanced at the barn and declared that the goddess of the earth's blessing was truly extraordinary, and because Noel was the chosen one of the gods, he was the recipient of this blessing. There was no doubt about it. In a deserted village like that, he hadn't expected to eat such high-quality meat. Noel told him he should thank Sarah, as she was the hunter there. They finally asked if she was a demon and why she was living with him. Noel explained that she had nowhere else to go, so he had asked her to help him rebuild the village. Mirage wanted to know if Sarah didn't see him as an enemy for having defeated the Demon King. However, Noel said that was precisely why he should help her. Surprised by his response, Mirage gave a smile. She then mentioned that the invaders had promised not to reveal anything about the village. Noel found her assurance comforting, while Anna remarked that he still believed in everything that had happened. Noel stood up, saying he would get more food and asking Mirage if she could still eat, to which she replied with a radiant smile. Seeing all of this, the prince was at a loss for words. He was finally beginning to understand why Noel didn't want to leave the village. Those who had attacked the village just a short time ago were now there with them, eating and drinking. Because Noel knew he was the hero, he had an open enough mind to accept anyone. Mirage agreed, noting that regardless of race or any other factor, there was no place in the world like this. Even though he had been betrayed by the kingdom, Noel remained resilient and committed to rebuilding the village. However, as the hero, he couldn't ignore the kingdom's situation. At the grill, Sarah asked Noel if she could stand by his side if he chose to fight for something. But Noel affirmed that he had no interest in participating in the revolution. Her interest is in the village and she relies on Sarah to defend it, who was thrilled by the idea. Sarah enthusiastically said she wants to stay by his side forever, almost leading to a misunderstanding. Jerjes prepares his horse to leave and asks if the Sacred Queen and the Prince have already departed, and Noel confirms. They will likely continue their preparations for the coup, which troubles Jerjes as a member of the cavalry. Those who attacked them also left before dawn. Sanya wants to know if her father will fight too, but Jerjes says that after the attack on her, he will likely relinquish his position. He is still patriotic, but is already questioning whether the king deserves his loyalty. After saying this, he finally leaves. Sanya asks Noel what will happen to their kingdom. He replies that regardless of what occurs, they will remain the same, focused on making the village prosper. She becomes thoughtful, realizing that everything around Noel constantly changes. Noel looks at her with concern, but Sanya assures him that no matter what happens, this is how it will be. Now they needed to wash the dishes they use for breakfast. Aqua is demonstrating her water abilities. Sanya is teaching her the basics about seasonings. Sugar, salt, vinegar, miso, and soy sauce are essential for developing flavors. She asks Aqua to watch the pot while she fetches some milk. Sanya leaves the kitchen, closing the door behind her. Immediately, Aqua recalls Sanya saying sweetness could be good for her, and that must be achieved with sugar. Assuming this, she adds sugar to the recipe. She also adds more salt and a lot of vinegar. However, she couldn't remember miso. She ends up associating what she heard with animal fat and goes to get some. She remembers Sanya's advice that some people use chocolate as a secret ingredient. For Aqua, it didn't need to be a secret. Sanya finally returns with the milk and thanks Aqua for helping, deciding to taste what she's making. While Aqua drinks milk, Sanya falls to the floor, overwhelmed by the horrifying flavor. Noel manages to salvage the recipe but has to tie up Aqua, much to her displeasure. In Sanya's village, the man who greeted them didn't know that her acquaintance was a farmer. However, he was grateful for the favor of bringing those products, given the issues with the harvest. Next time, he hopes to be able to buy them. Noel remembers something and says he has something else to sell, and the man wants to know what it is. Before finding out, they hear heavy footsteps and see a massive boar. The man is immediately frightened, but the animal is riddled with arrows. Succumbing to its wounds, it collapses near him. Sarah had chased it there to avoid carrying it herself and was glad it arrived in time. The man, still terrified, agreed with her, stammering. From the sale, they earned many gold coins. This was the result of selling the vegetables and the animals Sarah hunted. Aqua wants to know what they will buy with the money, perhaps sweets or snacks. But to her dismay, Noel plans to buy more seeds to continue planting. He needs to think of a way to increase the village's income as it continues to grow. A tea made from *Halonkan* is being served. Sanya mentions that it's a valued herb, harvested nearby, and describes its appearance. Aqua gets excited, thinking that if she finds it, she can buy many sweets. But Noel explains he has already searched around the village and found none. Sarah speaks up. There's a place that caught her attention halfway to the mountain. They go there and Sarah says it's around that area. Aina observes that it's poisonous miasma, likely coming from underground. They need to do something about it, and Noel asks if Aina can handle it. For that amount, she says she can. She uses purification magic on the area. After that, everything seems to improve. As they walk, they reach a magical place so beautiful it doesn't seem to belong near such an abandoned area. Finally, they find the herb they were searching for. It glows. When it's pulled from the ground, its glow disappears. They think this might happen after it's harvested, but when it loses its glow, its flavor also degrades. Noel asks if Aina has a solution for this. Using a time-freezing spell, she attempts to preserve it. Another branch of the same herb is still glowing. Even after being harvested, it retains its glow. The spell worked. Aina considers chilling it, but Noel advises against too much cold as it would ruin the flavor. She cools it just enough to keep it fresh. There must be more nearby, and Sarah quickly finds the next one. After using a lot of magic, Aina can no longer walk. Her stamina has reached its limit. Noel asked if she was really okay and advised her to rest a little while he fetched some water for her. Sarah mentioned that thanks to Aina, they were able to collect the herb, but Aina replied that Noel could use the same magic as her. This left Sarah astonished. Recalling the past, Aina said Noel used to do almost everything himself. She had even thought she wasn't useful to him, but here she was doing her part. Sarah shared the sentiment. Earlier, while hunting, Noel could have handled the boar himself, but he let her do it. It was a gesture of trust, allowing them to take charge of tasks. She found it incredible that he refused the Holy Queen's request. For the good of everyone, Noel should have accepted it. This made her wonder if he trusted those around him enough to avoid participating actively in events. No one knows, perhaps he just wants to keep those he cares about far from the war. After all, there are people who would certainly fight by his side. Finally, Noel returned with the water. He quickly asked if Sarah was okay, noticing her face was very red, but she said it was nothing. At home, Sania had breaded and fried some fish. It was truly a wonderful meal. Noel was very interested and wished he could grow the ingredients himself. Sania explained that she had heard it was impossible unless there was a rich and abundant supply of spring water. This made Sarah ponder for a moment. Everyone at the table turned to Aqua, who still didn't understand. Placing a hand on her shoulder, Noel said he would leave it in her hands. Outside, they managed to make the first sprout emerge. Inside the house, Noel wanted to know what Jerzes planned to do about the coup. Since Garchi was his superior and had joined the revolutionaries, Jerzes would have to take a position too. It seemed that General Garchi had finally made a decision. At first, he was concerned about his daughter, but Schwartz reminded him that she had the hero by her side, which convinced him. The church was already on their side. The mystery remained about the court mages, as they were very secretive. Noel then called for Aina. Aware of the situation, she said she could gather information for him. However, she wanted to know if he was okay with this since they weren't going to help actively in the coup. But she was bothered by those who ignored the true hero. Noel didn't care about the success of the revolution. What he truly wanted was for her to return safely to the village. This moved her, and she promised to return safely. With her mission set, she left the village. They watched her as she made her way. After that, Noel announced that he would be leaving too, prompting Aqua to ask where he was going. He intended to collect more Hylomcons to give to the revolutionary army since they had the effect of neutralizing fatigue. None had been harvested since they matured and their current stock had already been donated, so they needed more supplies. They had managed to sell many goods, so they should have about 10,000 gold coins. However, Sarah had to buy utensils, leaving them with little money. Noel realized they needed an accountant. Sania lamented that she had not been taught accounting. Star also admitted she hadn't learned it, as it wasn't typical for her race, while Aqua simply wanted more sweets. Amidst the problems, someone arrived to volunteer for the position. Noel wanted to know who she was. She introduced herself as Lilia Schwier, sister of the prince, and said she was there to help at her brother's request. This revelation left Noel astonished at their familial connection. Lilia said she had heard much about the hero from her brother. Noel asked why a princess had come, but she explained that her brother insisted they maintain contact. She was knowledgeable about taxes and the national treasury and was there to assist. There were various papers and coins piled up. Curious, she wanted to know what it all was. Noel admitted that he hadn't been able to calculate their finances yet and that the situation was a bit complicated. Lilia confidently said she could finish everything in an hour and asked for another task afterward. Noel was impressed by her enthusiasm. He told her that finishing in that time would be impossible and asked her to take as much time as needed. Later, he went to check on her and found her dozing off. It must have been an exhausting task. However, she had completed everything. She soon woke from her nap. Still sleepy, she reminded him she had said she would finish quickly. All the records were summarized in a book. It included market price comparisons, selling prices, and future price forecasts. Opening a page, she says it's possible to raise the price of certain items, even if the population is hungry. And since the quality of these items is excellent, she even dreams of creating a brand. Lilia assures them that if she becomes their accountant, their revenue will keep increasing. Seeing that stack of books, Noel even wonders if it's some kind of magic. However, he remains a little apprehensive. In the kingdom, uncertainties linger about the revolution's direction. The commander looks at his army determined. Sania and Sarah relax in a hot spring, enjoying how refreshing and soothing it is. It was the work of Noel and Aqua, and they think about thanking them for it. Then Aqua appears, leaping through the air, claiming that, yes, it's her work. Lilia admits it's truly incredible and wants to know how Aqua managed to create it. Aqua explains it helps them recover stamina and is great for keeping the skin hydrated. This could be an excellent tourist attraction, and Sania asks if they'll really attract visitors. Lilia says she was merely discussing possibilities. She then offers to wash Aqua's back, and Aqua comments that the newcomer is very eager to help. Meanwhile, Lilia talks about the quality of the water to Aqua, and Sania approaches Sarah. Sania wants to know her opinion about Lilia. Sarah says she finds her talented, and it's good that Lilia is handling the accounting. Sania admits she overheard Noel's conversation with Gerzes the other day. They were discussing the prince's plans. She doesn't understand how someone so close to the king could be involved in the conflict. Noel speculates it might be at the Sacred Queen's request, but there could be additional motives. One of them is likely the prince's knowledge that Noel is the true hero. Someone capable of defeating the Demon King is essentially a weapon, someone who can directly alter the balance of power between kingdoms. But Noel reminds her that Cain holds the hero's title, and when the prince learned the truth, he should have lowered his guard. Gerzis places a book on the table. It's Cain's autobiography, in which he calls himself the hero. It details Cain's supposed heroic deeds for the world to read. They had to create it because Cain's reputation as useless is notorious. However, not everyone believes it, and some are convinced Cain defeated the Demon King in questionable ways. Everything in the book is true, except for Cain's authorship of the events. The other kingdoms are likely cautious because of this. Noel becomes thoughtful after hearing Gerzis. Sarah now understands Sanya's concerns, who imagines Lilia's move to the village might have additional motives. Even if that's the case, Sarah decides to follow whatever Noel chooses. Sanya worries about Noel and Lilia going shopping alone, but Sarah reassures her that Noel is practically invincible as the hero. Still, with a hint of jealousy, Sanya decides to join them anyway. Sarah finds Sanya's worry unreasonable. In the city, Lilia calls for Sanya. Lilia has already researched all the prices and is ready to take her to the cheapest places. Lilia strolls happily through the city, while Sanya remains uneasy, until someone orders them to stop. If they want to keep walking, they'll need to pay a toll. Lilia asks how much, and the man says it's 110 gold coins. Lilia accuses him of greed, claiming 16 coins would suffice, even considering inflation. The man threatens them, saying if they don't pay willingly, there will be trouble. But if they pay with their bodies, he wouldn't object. Lilia asks what he'd do if she screamed uncontrollably, and the man confidently says no one would help them. Smiling, Lilia doubts his claim. She pushes Sanya toward him, saying she's counting on her. Faced with the bandit, Sanya panics. She screams loudly for help. The man mocks her, stating no one will come. But Noel is already there, having taken down several people. Is not pleased by what he sees. Lilia can't believe she witnessed Noel fighting. It was truly a stroke of luck. She could even imagine her brother's envious expression, but Noel downplays it, saying it's nothing significant. She agrees, saying bandits like these are nothing to the hero. Then she spots a messenger pigeon. It's from her brother, and asks for permission to read the message. Noel hands Sanya a cup of water. Sitting on a bench, she asks how he knew they were in trouble, but Noel says he was nearby and already cautious. Sanya wants to know if he was genuinely worried about her. She assumes he must also be suspicious of Lilia. She apologizes for eavesdropping on his conversation with Gerzis, but Noel insists Lilia is an ally, and there's no need to be suspicious of her. This leaves Sanya speechless. Noel couldn't understand how he could trust others so easily, even after being betrayed by the kingdom and accepting a demon like Sarah. She wished she could be like him, able to accept people sincerely. Noel noticed then that she had an issue with trust. Sanya admitted that since her engagement was broken, she had struggled to trust others. Having shared the same suffering, Noel told her that the courage to trust is what builds strong bonds, and he believed in the village's future. He hoped that one day Sanya would also trust everyone there. This moved her, and she asked why he cared so much about her. Noel explained that with the revolution unfolding, her connection to Garchi could make her a target. He had even tasked Sarah with protecting her, something that had also been foreseen by Lilia. Understanding the situation better, Sanya hadn't realized how much she worried him. Since he had done everything without her knowing, it seemed that he and Sarah had handled things well. Sanya thanked him and expressed confidence in his abilities. However, she blushed more than she had intended. Finally, Lilia arrived, apologizing for keeping them waiting. Noel asked if something had happened. Lilia revealed that the revolutionary army had been defeated. This unexpected news shocked them. In battle, the soldiers were ordered to retreat because the enemy was too strong. Hootle grinned, saying they were nothing but ants. Now he would send them to hell. Despite the defeat, it wasn't over. General Garchi remained unharmed, and Sanya shouldn't worry about him. Hearing that was indeed a relief. Sarah asked what led to their defeat. It seemed they had underestimated Gudel, who was still an experienced knight. Though he had been overshadowed by Noel, he remained formidable, prompting the hero to reflect on him. Lilia mentioned that her brother had another request for Noel. He asked if it was a request for him to join the war. No, her brother just wanted more vegetables from the village, but he asked that Noel deliver them personally. If that was all, Noel didn't mind doing it. Lilia warned that it was near the battlefield and could be dangerous, but Noel said he would go anyway. Presenting a map, she pointed out the shortcut suggested by the prince. Gudel was sitting, examining a large map. Cain arrived and congratulated him on his victory. Gudel wanted to know if there was a problem, but Cain said it was merely a visit. Noticing Gudel's foul mood, Cain remarked that if he had time for visits, he should have time to discipline the court mages. If they had been present in previous battles, they would already be celebrating victory in the capital. Cain assured him they would join the fight soon. Gudel dismissed this, but insisted Cain behave like royalty. Because of this, Gudel's expectations for Cain were high. They needed a decisive victory to solidify his reign. As a reward for his performance, Cain brought him a gift. Inside a chest was a finely forged sword. It was a family heirloom set in legends who have sacrificed its wielder's life to seal the evil god. The legend also claimed that if it were stained with blood, the god would be reborn, but to Gudel, it was nothing more than an antique. Cain's wife commented that now Gudel could truly become a hero. This made Goodle smile wickedly. Whether it was the evil god or Garchi, it would become stepping stones for him to pave his path. A messenger hawk reached the revolutionaries. They now knew that the mages were mobilizing, with cavalry on one side and mages on the other. If they were surrounded, it would be the end. The general reflected on the situation. Gerzes wanted to know where Schwartz was since they had only retreated to that point under his orders. A guard reported that Schwartz had left on patrol in the morning and had yet to return, leaving both men puzzled. For a moment, they even considered the possibility of betrayal. Meanwhile, Goodle's army advanced, until the knight in front suddenly stopped marching, prompting Goodle to ask what was going on. The knight apologized, explaining that a wagon was blocking the path. Goodle ordered it removed, but the driver was causing problems. Irritated, Goodle declared that they were an army. Advancing on his course, he approached the issue, demanding to know what the driver thought he was doing. The driver responded that it had been a long time since they last met. Goodle didn't immediately recognize him and continued acting arrogantly, until he realized the man was Noel, someone he believed to be dead. He couldn't comprehend how Noel was alive, much less where he had been all this time. Noel says he grows some crops and is currently heading to sell them. Goodle wonders for a moment if Noel knows they betrayed him. He offers to buy the vegetables and pay double for them, so that Noel can quickly return home. But Noel, staying true to his word, refuses the offer. This irritates Goodle. Even so, Goodle offers 10 times the price, suggesting Noel take more vegetables and return later. However, Noel says there is something he will accept instead of money, and Goodle says it can be anything he wants, as long as it's available. But it's something precious to Goodle, and Noel warns he won't return it, even if Goodle regrets it. Goodle stays silent, thinking Noel is acting arrogantly. Continuing, Noel says it would make an excellent souvenir for the general. Immediately, Goodle begins to sweat, fearing Noel might be referring to Garchi and wondering if they are allies. With a serious expression, Goodle declares it's time to return the item. Realizing Noel might know too much, Goodle feels his own head is now at stake. Goodle cannot read Noel and starts considering the possibility of them having to fight. He briefly considers launching a surprise attack to gain the advantage, but he isn't sure if Noel is on guard since he hasn't stopped looking at Goodle's sword. However, Goodle knows his chances are non-existent if a fight breaks out between them. Stokey decides to turn his course around, much to the surprise of his men. He needs to flee quickly before he becomes the only one left alive. He orders his men to attack, declaring Noel an enemy. After giving the command, Goodle flees without looking back. The remaining soldiers surround the carriage. Noel asks if the sword is truly valuable because he'd like to give it to Garch since his was broken. Now he has to decide what to do with those soldiers. The mages gather for the battle. One woman remarks that wars are always troublesome and that everything could be resolved through diplomacy. Apparently, the newcomer Goodle ordered their mobilization. Another mage is upset because she had to suspend her experiments. One of them reminds the group that it's a royal order, so they should give their utmost effort to fulfill it. But all they want is to return home and finish quickly. Aina suggests they forget about this and simply head back. Immediately, the other mages look at her confused. One calls her an idiot, emphasizing that it's a royal order. Another calls him a fool, asserting that Ina could handle everything alone and even an incompetent like him would be capable of that. Another says it always irritates her to hear such stupid opinions, as people have lost any shame in being foolish. The first mage tells her that her favor with the prince has made her arrogant. A court mage appointed by the prince is indeed inconvenient. It's only because of this favor that she's there, as she's far below their level. They agree she's useless. One suggests they incinerate her before meeting the army. After enduring all these insults, Aina sighs deeply. She admits she used to be very arrogant, thinking she could perform all types of magic, but the truth is she's still only halfway through her studies. But there's one thing she's absolutely certain of. She was the one chosen to subdue the Demon King, not them. A massive magic circle appears, and those who mocked her now begin emptying their bowels involuntarily. Aina won't let these fools continue their antics and hinder Noel. At the camp, Schwartz asks what they're doing, saying they should give the order to advance. A knight wants to know where the prince is. Without answering, Schwartz insists they should seize the opportunity. But advancing in these circumstances would result in them being surrounded by Goodle and the mages. Confident, the prince states that Goodle won't be coming. Gerzes demands to know what he means, but Noel had already dealt with Goodle. All Goodle left behind was a pile of bodies and riderless horses. At first, they thought Noel would only delay them, but the outcome exceeded expectations. Noel is truly powerful. His sword was too fast, and no one could oppose him. It wasn't an exaggeration, and as they spoke, an explosion erupted. Gerzes and the general demand to know what that was. A knight reports it came from the direction of the mages. Indeed, now they truly have a chance. The general orders an advance toward the palace. This is their moment. They would take the palace in a single charge. Meanwhile, Goodle continues fleeing on his course, aware he narrowly escaped death. He comes across a village along the way. This brings him some relief as he was already thinking of resting. While standing still, he hears heavy footsteps approaching him. A massive creature is fleeing, riddled with arrows. The creature collapses, overwhelmed by its wounds. He watches everything in horror. The hunter of the beast soon appears. He immediately recognizes Sarah. He can't understand why she's still alive. She wouldn't have been able to remove the collar without someone capable of doing so. It's then his sharp mind connects the dots, realizing Noel is alive. He deduces that Noel must have been the one to free her and that Jerzis had always been on their side. This means Noel is living in this village, a place Gödel never expected to find connected to the hero. Taking Sarah hostage, he is convinced he'll kill Noel this time. Afterward, he plans to seize everything in the village and turn it into his fortress. Sarah is already holding her bow. She won't let Gödel have his way. She will protect this place. Sarah fires several arrows at Gödel. He deflects them all. With a single movement, he blocks every arrow. Looking to the side, he notices the carcass of the beast. Thinking quickly, he grabs it with his hands. He hurls the carcass toward Gödel. Gödel slices through it, calling the effort futile. It's only then that he notices the arrows coming right after. Though he isn't hit, his horse ascends to the animal afterlife. Now without a mount, Gödel mocks, asking if this is some demon slave tradition. Unexpectedly, Sonia arrives, asking if Sarah is okay. Worried she doesn't notice, Gödel sees an opportunity. His sword is already at her neck. He orders Sarah to drop the bow if she wants Sonia to live. Even so, Sonia tells Sarah not to obey him. However, Sarah complies. Gödel remarks that it's a shame because he will kill her anyway, leaving them to wait in hell for Noel's arrival. Sarah is devastated, now unarmed. Sonia laments, thinking about how Noel would react if he saw this. But Gödel interrupts, saying there's no hope for them. Noel is surrounded by his subordinates, he says, though as he speaks, someone declares they found him. A hooded figure approaches. Gödel asks if they are one of Noel's allies. The response is a magical circle filled with lightning. Realizing the danger, Gödel releases the hostage. He charges toward the mage standing before him. He manages to pierce the figure with ease. Even injured, they smile, saying Gödel has finally done it. That act will break the seal binding them, because that sword is a seal. Saying these words, the figure collapses from the wound. Now they claim they will change the world, though Gödel is bewildered. Without any talent, he had stolen their place on the subjugation team, even though they had dedicated their life to researching magic. For that reason, they will unleash the power capable of reshaping this unjust world, by freeing the evil god that will consume all living things. Now Gödel is utterly terrified by the figure before him. It licks him as if savoring him. Gödel asks if it knows who he is, declaring himself the future king of this nation. Completely panicked, he cries out that he doesn't want to die. He hasn't become king yet. But the massive creature wraps its tongue around him, swallowing him as if he were a piece of candy. Sarah and Sonia watch the being, now declaring itself the evil god. They have no idea what's happening. The sky darkens and is overtaken by lightning. On the ground, Aqua is frightened by the sight. She doesn't know what it is, but it's definitely bad. Wherever people are, they stare at the lightning forming above. Animals begin to fall ill and fruits rot on the vine. Inside the church, the Holy Queen senses something sinister. This calamity rivals the Demon King, if not worse. She orders the bishops and highest-ranking clerics to be gathered immediately. Even if they all come together, the best they can do is delay its advance for a short time, and she considers seeking help. Praying, she asks for the goddess's protection, for the evil god has risen once again. The goddess appears before her, saying her power is not necessary. This leaves the queen utterly confused, but the goddess reassures her, saying that friendly hands are already facing the enemy. Hearing this, the queen swallows hard, unable to fully understand. The evil god continues to form its body, massive and looming before Sarah and Sonia. They realize it's growing larger, as if consuming energy. They know they must flee immediately, but find themselves unable to move. They tremble before the calamity. Sarah hugs Sonia, determined to protect her, knowing she is a potential companion for Noel. Then he appears, apologizing for making them wait. Noel was already wielding a sword, while Sarah stood speechless at his appearance. The evil god roared furiously, like Unit 01 in Berserk mode. He was ready to destroy everything, but he was unable to do anything, as Noel obliterated him with a single blow, without even breaking a sweat, as if he were Saitama. The sky cleared once again, and Noel asked if Aqua was alright. Still stunned, she wanted to know why they were all there. She had felt a very strange sensation, but Noel assured her that there was no longer any problem. Everyone was safe now. At the royal castle, the floor was covered in blood. Jerzis continued fighting the resistance. He intended to hold them off and ordered the general to advance. On his path, the general opened the doors to the royal hall. One of the king's lackeys called him reckless for not knowing what place that was. The general replied that if the person sitting on the throne were capable, there would be no reason to rebel against him, but that was not the case. Now was the end of His Majesty's reign. He still saw a kitten stuck in a tree. Presuming it was trapped, he climbed up to rescue it. With the kitten in his arms, he said it should thank her later. But the branch couldn't support his weight and broke. Before he could hit the ground, he was saved by Noel. She looked at him, completely flushed, and thanked him. Looking at her, he said she was very cute. That made her even more embarrassed. Noel asked if he could touch her, and Aina nearly went into cardiac arrest. Noel then explained that he was referring to the kitten in her arms. With a handprint on his face, Aina said it was his fault for being so clueless, to which Sarah agreed. The dust had finally settled, and the general celebrated. The citizens celebrated Garchi's victory. Walking with Noel, Sarah asked what should be done. After the royal family was deposed, their sins were exposed, and now they needed to convince the people and other kingdoms. Sarah wanted to know if the king would confess so easily. Noel couldn't say for sure. Additionally, Sarah wanted to know what Stella, the saint's punishment would be. In prison, she didn't understand how things had come to this, as she believed everyone had wished her happiness, until someone asked if she could hear the true voice of the people, for they were filled with resentment, not joy. Stella realized that it was the sacred queen, and beside her was Noel, whom she didn't know was alive. They were there to announce her punishment, something Stella hadn't been expecting. But she believed that having defeated the demon king, she shouldn't be subjected to this, and asked Noel to tell her so. They had all abandoned their positions and left Noel alone in the middle of the battle. That had been Gudel's instruction. The queen wanted to know if it was also Gudel's instruction for her to collaborate with the narrative of creating a false hero. Stella was left speechless. Extending her hand towards Stella's head, the queen said it was a sin for Stella to present herself as a saint. Then she began to remove the markings she had. This left Stella distraught, as it was the mark of her sanctity. The queen said it never belonged to her. It was granted by the goddess for aiding the hero. Now she would have to atone for her sins for the rest of her life. But Stella wouldn't accept this and turned to Noel, saying he would now be recognized as the kingdom's hero. She was also pregnant and couldn't handle this. Crying, she begged for his mercy. Noel said that if she truly wished to change, she could go to the village at any time. It was still being rebuilt, nearly in ruins, and there weren't many workers, but she could go there if she wanted. But she refused, saying there was nothing there. If she had to go to such a miserable place, she wouldn't survive. Then he said she would have the child, raise it, and learn to be a person again. That was the punishment given to her. This made her fall to the ground, sobbing. Still distraught, she wanted to know when it happened to Prince Cain. He had been sent to a mine for forced labor, and the chance of seeing him again was practically nil. This left her even more hopeless. It was a tragic end for her. However, if she went to a monastery, she could at least care for her child, to which Noel said yes. He left with Sarah, reflecting on the recent events. It was Christmas, and they were dressed for the occasion. Aqua wanted to know more about Santa Claus, and Sanya explained that he gave gifts to those who behaved. Excited, she passed the information to Sarah about Santa Claus' arrival. This made her excited, as she would be able to fight him again. If you're not a good person, he will come to slice you with an axe, like a demon king. After hearing that, she couldn't sleep, and Noel couldn't leave the gift in her room. Aqua eats voraciously and with great joy. Rice cakes made with the water from there taste amazing. She eats non-stop until she notices her belt tightening too much. Noel realizes that even gods gain weight. The king is now a defendant in a trial presided over by the sacred queen. The attendees observe each other, and the king is not happy at all. He claims there was no overcharge and that everything was done without his consent. If he had known, he would have stopped it immediately. Lilia asks her brother how he dares to say that out loud and if the king has any chance of escaping. He is evading responsibility, but they can't prove him wrong. The king's advisor could be useful with his testimony, but he is missing. They don't know if he fled or was killed. Amidst the chaos, this information cannot be confirmed. It is said that Ina learned of a document confirming the conspiracy against the hero, but the king claims he knew nothing. She reinforces that it is a confidential document in the magical court and that the king's signature is on it. Someone says that these documents, besides being confidential, are sealed with magic, and someone like Aina wouldn't be capable of breaking it. Another person, smiling, says that a mediocre mage like Aina would indeed be incapable of breaking the seal and must be lying. Hesitantly, the king agrees with them. He says that fabricating a royal order that doesn't exist is a conspiracy against him. Lilia says they should present the evidence now. Faced with her brother's silence, she asks if they indeed have it. She asks if their kingdom's mages couldn't break the seal, but he claims it would take many years. Even Aina couldn't do it. Even if she bypassed the security, she couldn't break the protection. Lilia is apprehensive, as they can't do anything to incriminate the king for his crimes. Their solution is to use time to gather circumstantial evidence, until someone enters the court, apologizing for the delay. Clumsy, she ends up tripping, and the king asks what her problem is. Her name is Cynthia, and she came from the Sacred Kingdom to contribute to the investigations. She represents an intelligence division that serves the church. The queen says she arrived on time and should report immediately. Holding some papers, she obeys the queen. On them there is a picture, and she asks if anyone there knows this person. She is the mage who lost her position when Aina was appointed to the court. She was involved in the resurrection incident of the evil god. The attendees were shocked by this statement, but Cynthia says that this is off-topic as it has already been resolved. The instrument used for that was a sword belonging to the royal family, and it was the magical court's responsibility to guard it. The investigated mage was seeking information about the sword to revive the evil god. To do so, she learned to break protection seals. This supports Aina's claim that she could have indeed seen that document with a broken seal, as her narrative is quite believable given the timeline. Even so, there is still no material evidence of the accusation, only testimonial evidence. The king says this should end there, as it is all just speculation. There are no mages from the old order left who can break the seals. Now they are unbreakable. The king looks at the long-haired man with great relief, believing he will get away with it. The queen asks if they don't want to see the evidence. Then two people begin entering the hall. They are Noel and Sarah, bringing something with them. This leaves the king terrified as he doesn't understand how the true hero is still alive. Everyone present has the same reaction as him. Noel hands the evidence to the queen, who acknowledges that obtaining it must have been difficult, but he claims it wasn't hard to break the protection. Then she opens the document before everyone. She asks the king if he can give the same testimony now that the evidence of his order is there. This shakes those who are trying to clear his name. It is irrefutable evidence of his betrayal against the gods, and thus he should be punished. The king's defeat was complete. Sanya remembered when her father told her she would be the fiancée of Prince Cain. They saw each other once a year, but there was an even greater distance between them. Cain wasn't even interested in holding her hand. When she learned of his pregnancy, she was even more devastated. She went to see him in prison, and Cain asked what she was doing there. He confessed that he had always hated her. Because she always did everything she was asked to do with a smile on her face, she was almost like a mirror of him. Sanya clenched her fists upon hearing this. Without thinking twice, he landed a right hook on the clown's cheek, who wasn't even able to dodge it. He got up, still disoriented from the blow. Sanya said that they weren't the same. She chose her own path. On the ground, he watched her, speechless. Sanya said goodbye to him but wished he would find redemption. After that, he was taken to his prison. Sanya thanked Noel because thanks to him, she was able to say goodbye. But her hand had been injured from the impact. Now they have to walk toward the future. There will be pain, but there will also be hope. That was enough to bring her smile back. From above, they looked down at the village they were building. Lena says she worked hard too, but wanted to know if Noel agreed with that. Patting her head, he said she was the one who fixed the house when he wasn't there, and it was his fault for not thanking her sooner. He asked if she had regained her confidence and hoped she would soon be the leader of the mages. Aina wanted to know if he already knew that. He found out from Garzas, and Aina apologized for having to leave when she was most needed. Not to mention, she still needed to thank Noel. Inside the house, Aqua didn't like what she heard. Sanya was leaving too. But Sanya wanted to help with her father's work. Noel consoled her, saying she would return to where she lived, and Sarah said it wasn't like they would never see each other again. If she wanted to visit, she would always be welcome. But Sanya was too emotional to say anything. Someone opened the door and said the village was too gloomy. Then a woman in a nun's habit from the underworld of the deep web appeared. Aqua had no idea who she was. Noel recognized her from the court. She was Cynthia. She had been dispatched from the church to the village's church and asked them to take care of her. He then asked if she was from the sacred kingdom and if it was the queen's order. Cynthia confirmed that if the church established itself there, it would improve the village's integrity. But there was a catch. A demon woman lived in that place. No matter how kind Noel was, she asked for her immediate exile because, as a cleric, she couldn't tolerate that. But Noel refused and recommended the cleric not to force unnecessary issues. She imagined these were his emotions but questioned whether the hero was just a depraved man. Like any other demon, she seduces him with her clothing and customs. But Sanya said she was the one who made those clothes, as Sarah had been kind to her, much to Cynthia's surprise. The daughter of the general, who is a pillar of the nation, is friends with a demon. She hadn't expected such disrespectful behavior to emerge right after they had removed a blasphemous king. She said their conception of God's will was distorted. Noel said they didn't share the same philosophy and asked her to return with a message for the queen. They wouldn't use her help or strength or anything. These words moved Sarah. Aqua agreed, saying that even if they wanted to grow, those who couldn't be kind to others weren't welcome there. The cleric observed silently what they said. Since she had already come there was no turning back. She would take it upon herself to educate them properly and guide them to become a splendid village. In the middle of the forest, there were abandoned ruins. Threatening eyes emerged from the darkness. Fishing, Jerza said the new cleric was too radical. He heard about it from Sanya. Even though she was sent by the sacred kingdom, she brought discord. Because of this, Noel had his hands full. In any case, he went there at the General Garshi's request. The country would recognize Noel's deeds and give him the appropriate rewards. They would grant him a new title, territory around the village, and bonuses and privileges. As they were fishing, Noel joked, asking if the fish were his bonus too, since Jerzas had lost his. But beyond that, they needed to position themselves before the other kingdoms, having expelled the royal family. They planned to hold major events celebrating their victory. Catching a fish, the heroes said they didn't need that. That was the kind of response Jerzas had been expecting. Lilia approached them and said tonight's dinner would be lively. Noel greeted her, noting that she had returned from her country. She had been appointed alongside her brother to handle the kingdom's finances so she would stay there. And incidentally, she would guide the village on how to grow. They'd renegotiate the reward, which would be enough to secure the village's future for the next 100 years. Noel said he wished for the reward to be directed toward the kingdom's reconstruction. Lilia said the kingdom would be grateful for that. Furthermore, he declined attendance at the celebrations as he had already been declared missing, which was great. Jerzas had expected something different, and Lilia had a suggestion. She suggested he accept the titles and territory, as it would help him protect his allies. Jerzas, upon hearing this, wants to know if he really plans to establish a church there. That way they can find out what Cynthia is actually planning. Guided by an amulet, she walks through the forest until she comes across the entrance to a ruin. Sarah, who had been following her, asked her to explain what that place was. She hadn't noticed she was being followed and praised Sarah's stealth. Sarah says that she went to the heart of the mountain, and wants to know if this is really the place she intended to reach. Cynthia says that Sarah doesn't understand true values and that she is not obligated to explain anything to a demon, so Sarah decides to force her to talk. She quickly draws her bow. On the other side, the cleric pulls out a revolver. Before they could engage in a duel of wills, a beast roared. That was definitely the sound of a monster. The creature emerges from its lair sniffing the air, while the two had already hidden in the trees. If they leave it there, there's no guarantee it won't head to the village. Sarah says there's no other choice now and descends from the tree. She chases the beast, determined not to let it escape. She hits it with one of her arrows. However, the creature's skin is too tough. This leaves Sarah stunned. Even so, the creature realizes something touched its body. Now its attention is on Sarah. If the hide is thick, she'll aim for its eyes instead. She shoots her arrows but misses her target. The task is challenging and she cannot make her shot more precise. Then the cleric tells her to just shoot, and Sarah listens. She launches another arrow. Right after that, the cleric also fires a shot. By the magic of the plot, the bullet connects with the back of the arrow. This increases its destructive power as it flies for the creature. This time, the attack strikes brutally. Sarah wants to know what kind of projectile that was, and the cleric explains that it had the potential to amplify sacred energy. Luckily, she had a few on her, and beneath her clothing, there's much more. Things that might even need censoring. It was a coincidence, she says, and claims she wouldn't have been able to defeat it otherwise. Sarah wants to know what the place in front of her is, and the cleric says it's a dungeon. Upon hearing this, she becomes immediately apprehensive. Back home, they recount what they saw to Noel. He asks if it is indeed a relic of the demon god. Whenever malign forces appear on Earth, dungeons can arise as a result of that energy. If things continue this way, these creatures could spread destruction and death to nearby populations. Noel recognizes that they cannot let things remain like this. While they were talking, another person enters the room. These strangers declare that this place is not for peasants and that they will take care of it. They look curiously at these new characters. Noel wants to know if they are adventurers, and they say they were hired to eliminate the dungeon. Since they will handle it, they only ask to be shown the location of the place. Noel wants to know who hired them so quickly, but they can't say, only that they were sent there. To his surprise, the cleric says it's unnecessary. They can handle the dungeon themselves and don't need help. The mercenary asks if she believes that God's blessing could protect her from the beasts. The dungeon is not a peaceful place like the one these simple peasants are living in. This comment irritates the cleric, but without losing her composure, Noel says he will show them the location. He decides to leave it to them since they don't seem willing to give up so easily. This angers the cleric so much that she almost gets excommunicated. When they arrive at the place, they encounter a massive creature, already defeated. Seeing its size, the mercenary wants to know who was capable of such a feat. Sarah says it was her and the cleric, but the mercenary thinks this must be some kind of joke. A beast like that requires A-level adventurers as it is immune to common magic and physical attacks. Faced with this, he invites her to join his team, but Sarah refuses because she doesn't want to abandon the village. He says the village holds no future for her and that, as an adventurer, she could earn money, travel to many places, and eat whatever she desires. But Sarah says she doesn't want any of that. What she wants is right there in the village. Hearing this, Noel smiles discreetly. Since she remains resolute, the mercenary says it's a waste of potential. A small girl says she's finished creating the barrier. He praises her work, saying it's necessary to prevent beasts from escaping, and Noel says he will accompany them in case they need help. But the mercenary refuses, claiming a peasant would only slow them down. As they entered the dungeon, Sarah asked Noel if he thought they would be able to succeed, but all he could do now was wait for their return. In the distance, Lilia called out to him, accompanied by the cleric. As they got closer, he asked why she was in such a hurry. She wanted to conquer the dungeon, but he warned her that some adventurers were already inside. Lilia stated that it should be them doing it, not other people. Noel wanted to know exactly what she meant by that. Valuable materials could be obtained from the beasts. Whoever controlled the dungeon would have a monopoly on selling these materials, and they could also charge for access to it, a way to increase the village's revenue. Noel liked the idea. For the kingdom's sake, she asked for his help. Sarah wanted to know what he would do now after hearing that. Inside the dungeon, they were already dealing with a massive creature. The mage used her wind magic to attack. It was super effective, slicing the enormous snake into chunks. Her leader praised her work, saying it was well executed. Another member was leaving marks along the path, commenting that they had returned to the beginning. This left the woman disappointed, as they were just going in circles and monsters kept appearing. It would be nice if someone had map skills, but those were very rare. Apparently someone like that was in the guild, but they had already been hired by someone else. The mage noted that the barrier she had created was interacting with something. It wasn't a beast, but something human. Hearing this, the mercenary assumed they were being followed. Their power was considerable, but not enough to conquer the dungeon. They needed cunning to find the correct path, knowledge to avoid traps, and intelligence to dodge unnecessary conflicts. They already had all of that. There was no way a commoner could surpass them. This reassured his team, who believed in his reasoning. Defeating yet another creature, Noel wanted to know if the strategy was just to kill monsters, but Sarah said they probably had to destroy the dungeon boss. The cleric clarified that, in fact, they needed to retrieve the core of that creature to claim ownership of the dungeon. It was hidden deep inside the dungeon, held great magical energy, and was very valuable. While she spoke, a slime fell onto Sarah's head. She panicked as it started slipping into her clothes, but Noel acted quickly and removed the creature from her. Slimes are excellent raw materials for certain things, as they are used in making some medicines. This made the cleric even more excited, as the church used them to create potions. Deeper inside the dungeon, the adventurers descended an enormous staircase. The mage noted the air was heavier. They were definitely approaching the boss's location until the beast was spotted. A giant humanoid spider. Faced with this, the mage thought of attacking by surprise since they hadn't been noticed yet. But their leader knew this wasn't a monster that could be easily defeated. He ordered them to retreat immediately. This displeased the mage, but he insisted they withdraw from combat. Another team member remarked that the core might be there, but the spider was too strong. Not to mention, the reward they would receive wasn't worth the risk. What he didn't notice was that there was already a spider at his feet. He immediately killed it with his sword, realizing they had been spotted by the creatures. All they could do now was run without looking back. Perhaps the creatures would follow them to the entrance, and the barrier wouldn't hold. But the leader said they should focus on escaping without stopping for anything. Soon, they saw light coming from a door. After running for a long time, they were finally outside. Their girl was waiting for them. Concerned, he asked if she was from the village and told her to run, as the area would soon be swarming with spiders. But she said she wasn't afraid of spiders. Summoning her magic, she said it made her nostalgic. They used to kill monsters like that all the time when hunting the Demon King. A menacing glow was concealed in the dungeon's darkness. The creature emerged angrily from its lair, its enormous twin limbs thrashing furiously, worthy of censorship. Unfazed by its intimidating presence, Ina struck once more with her lightning. The attack hit the monstrosity before her, a figure that would make Dr. Miami proud. It wasn't enough to obliterate it, but wounded it severely. The creature retreated into the dungeon. The adventurers, witnessing this, couldn't believe that a single attack from Ina was enough to drive it away. Their leader immediately recognized her as a court mage from her robes, and though he didn't know why she was there, he thanked her for saving them. Uncertain of their identities, he asked who they were. They are adventurers, and they didn't expect such a powerful monster to be in that dungeon. Worried, the woman asks if the girl is okay. They are talking about a woman who uses a bow. Aina knows they're talking about Sarah, and if she entered there, it was with Noel, so they must be fine. But their leader thinks the useless farmer couldn't be of much help, which elicits a sigh of disappointment from Aina. She wants to know why they were so scared of a monster like that. Offended, the adventurer asks what she means by that. Finally, Noel returns, asking what Ina is doing there. It was Lilia, who asked her to come and help them, but it seems she arrived late. To the adventurer's surprise, everyone is safe. The adventurer says they're lucky to be alive. If it were them who encountered the spider, they'd be dead. Even so, he says that anyone going in with a sword should be ready to take the initiative. He assumes Noel must have hidden, which should be shameful for him. Once again, he invites Sarah to join him on his adventures. Out of patience, the cleric says he should learn when to keep quiet to avoid embarrassing himself. Aina wants to know about the core, and Noel says it's in his bag. Incredulous, the adventurer wants to know how they managed to get it. Sarah says it was all thanks to Noel. This only unsettles the adventurer more, as he now believes they stole the item while he and his team distracted the monster. The spider certainly would have killed them. It's impossible for them to have defeated the spider without the mage's help and the distraction provided by his team. At that moment, Noel says the dungeon boss wasn't a spider. There was an empty floor, presumably where the spider should have been. If not, the adventurer wants to know what the boss was. Noel pulls a giant fang from his bag, saying the boss was an ancient dragon. After that, the adventurer nearly dies of a heart attack, but luckily his triglycerides are under control. He thinks it must be a joke. The fang can't be real because dragons are far beyond human capabilities. Back at the house, he asks what's wrong with this village. A seemingly omnipotent farmer, a court mage, and the princess of a neighboring kingdom. This is not an ordinary village, no matter how he looks at it. The cleric says this village is blessed by the greatest goddesses in the world. The adventurer questions this statement. Because of these blessings, the land's fruits are abundant, and there's a wealth of minerals and resources. She was about to continue praising the village when someone slammed a glass on the table. Noel offered them some of the village's water, saying it's the pride of the village and will relieve their fatigue. After drinking, the adventurer admits it's truly excellent water. Lilia speaks to Noel about the dungeon's outcome. The core they obtained is enormous. Lilia wonders if it's really a core. She has seen many in her life, but never one with such magical power. And as the accountant and manager of dungeon operations, she can't wait to improve the kingdom's financial health. Then the cleric interjects, saying that since she was the first to find the location, the church should also have a share in it. However, out of respect for Noel, she won't make an unreasonable demand. The only thing she wants is the core. Lilia waits for Noel's reaction. Indeed, Cynthia has a point in her argument. She thanks him for understanding this so easily. But for that, he has a request to make in return to the church. Now at the hot springs, Lilia is relaxing. There are places like this in the capital, but they don't compare to the quality here. Sarah asks if the girl is feeling unwell because her face is so red. But Lilia still can't believe she's bathing with heroes who defeated the Demon King. Sarah looks at her and gives an innocent smile. Sanya asks for permission to join as well, and Sarah inquires about her conversation with Noel. She wants to know why the hero would want to help the demon clan, but there's something he wants to do with the village in the future. This piques Sarah's curiosity. The cleric asks why he wants an orphanage. His answer is that Sarah is also part of them. She wants to know what connection the demon clan has to an orphanage, and Lilia notices that Noel is about to say something. For a world where humans and demons can coexist, one day he needs her help. That place will be the experiment, and to achieve that, he wants to educate a child who can change the future. But even if he does that, she doesn't believe much can be done. Still, Sarah is enchanted by his plans. Sanya said that soon there would be more people for Aqua to play with, which made her happy with the news. Two children introduced themselves. The girl was Lushy and the boy was Hatesu. They were children who had agreed to move from another orphanage, and the cleric said they were very well-mannered. Hearing this, Noel thanked them for deciding to move there. Looking at Aqua, the girl asked if she was also from the orphanage. This offended Aqua, as she proclaimed herself a goddess and said she would teach Lush the rules of the place. After an explanation, she asked if they understood. That was the best way to extract milk. They were impressed and acknowledged that this truly was the skill of a god. Noel was happy to see Aqua having fun with them, and the cleric mentioned that more children would soon arrive. Confidently, he believed that everything would improve from then on. The girl came over with a glass of milk, calling for Cynthia, but she tripped along the way. Before she could fall and spill the milk, Sarah caught her. Sarah asked if she was alright, and the girl said she was. She introduced herself to Sarah, saying her name was Lushy. Noticing Sarah was different, she asked about her ears. The cleric explained that Sarah was a demon who scared the girl. Now the children were looking at Sarah apprehensively, but Aqua told them not to be afraid because Sarah was a good person. The cleric, however, explained that some of the orphans had lost their parents in demon attacks, so it was normal for them to fear demons. Consoling Sarah, Noel said that in time they would come to understand. Inside the house, Jarrett asked if she could really use those materials. She remarked that everything there was very valuable. The cleric said Jarrett was a talented alchemist but hadn't yet shown her full potential. She had always struggled with the lack of materials and catalysts. She was overwhelmed to be in an environment with such resources. Noel told her that with the materials gathered from the dungeon, she could create whatever she wanted. She wanted to do so, but she worried that if she failed, she would waste the materials. Noel told her that failing was completely different from wasting. It was necessary for her to go further. Her life might have been different, but from now on, she should use her failures as motivation to achieve success. Besides, everything could be replenished from the nearby dungeons. After his words, she thanked him. Talking to Lilia, she asked about the magic potion, as she had heard that Jarrett wanted to make them. It was indeed a good choice, though more difficult to refine. It required many rare materials, but with the list in hand, Noel said they weren't as rare as they seemed. Lilia wanted to know if it was possible to make the potion with those materials, and Sarah asked if there was a problem. Most of the materials were rated at difficulty C, whereas difficulty and materials were generally used. Noel wasn't concerned about failure. Jarrett's willingness to try would be beneficial for teaching the children. Lilia was pleased he had thought of that. Even though it was little, it would take Sarah a long time to gather everything, and if manpower was an issue, they should seek help from the Adventurers Guild. But the adventurers were still upset about the last dungeon incident. However, Lilia knew the perfect person for the job. Voluntary work was still work, and she was tired of hunting small things. Nevertheless, this was her punishment for what she had done. But the dungeon wouldn't be difficult for her. After walking for a while, the cleric mentioned that this was the perfect spot for a picnic. Seeing the flowers, the children asked if those were the ones, and Cynthia confirmed, saying they would make a surprise gift for Jarrett. In the field, they happily picked flowers while the cleric watched them. Back at the house, a woman kicked the table and said she had brought what was asked for. Next time, she demanded not to put so much junk on the list, and Jarrett apologized to her. Seeing that behavior, Noel asked her not to act like that toward others. Now that they knew they were efficient at gathering materials, it would be easier to request things from adventurers, and he thanked the woman for her work. Soon after, the children arrived with lots of flowers, but they were surprised by how much the woman had gathered, considering she was alone. This flattered the woman. With all the materials, Jarrett began working. She carefully examined the test tubes. Then she ground the ingredients again. The process required her full concentration. Curious, the children peeked through the door to see what she was doing. Finishing, she told Noel she had completed it, and Lilia could hardly believe she only needed those materials. Jarrett wanted to take the potion to a city evaluator, but Noel said it wouldn't be necessary. It was a great potion, one of 3 with excellent craftsmanship, and he praised her work. Because of the compliment, Jarrett ended up feeling flattered. A potion like that is highly valuable and could be worth double due to its exceptional quality. Lilia is pleased because all the materials can be gathered in the village, which could greatly increase the local income. However, Noel wants to keep the price low to make it affordable. Lilia points out that this is an excellent opportunity to profit, and it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. Sarah says that if the risk decreases, it will be easier to obtain the rarer materials. There are many possible options, and she wants to know if Jarrett knows more recipes. Indeed, there's a vast array of things she'd like to try. Lilia has a caveat. The idea is good, but the current recipe is extremely profitable. However, before she could finish, she was interrupted. The adventurers are grateful. Thanks to the quality potions, it's much easier to earn money now. The mage says she no longer needs to worry about her magical power. They learn that it's the work of a young alchemist who set the price at an affordable level, which is a blessing. As night falls, she continues to work. The cleric is pleased with her because, thanks to her skills, they have impressed Noel. It was a wise decision to bring her along. Jared is happy to have met the expectations placed on her and promises it will continue that way. In front of her, a massive core is placed on the table. Jared is immediately alarmed by it. The cleric's wish is for the alchemist to create her masterpiece with it. Lilia now wants to recruit even more people, which left the others intrigued. Adventurers going to the dungeon will need food, items, and a place to sleep. But Noel says they'll need to carry all of that with them. They could request permission from the guild to set up a shop there. However, Lilia points out that they are not on good terms with the guild at the moment. Not to mention that it might seem too suspicious. In any case, they need to gather more workers for the village. Agreeing with her, Noel suggests they head to the city. The cleric wants to know why she's being kicked out of the street, and Aqua says she's just a villager now. Jarrett has social anxiety and struggles to talk to strangers. He wants to see the items she's already made and suggests taking someone to work at the shop. Cynthia wants to accompany Jarrett, but Noel has another task for her. Lilia asked her to make flyers for distribution. Even without knowing what they'd be used for, she agreed to the request. Sarah also wants to help but doesn't want to leave the village. Moreover, she's in charge of the children's safety. Being a demon, it's difficult for her to go to the city. Noel gently pats her head, assuring her that one day she'll be able to walk freely. Irritated, the cleric says that for this job, a demon won't be of any help. Agreeing with her, Sarah merely wished her good work. Aqua says not to worry because she'll bring her secret weapon. Wearing extremely revealing clothing, she asks what on earth that is. Aqua proudly announces the beautiful outfit designed by Samia. Noel says it's tasteful, while the woman hiding her twin says it's barbaric. She's very uncomfortable showing so much skin, and her twins. Now that people are being drawn there, it's time to distribute the flyers. So they continue working in the square. The flyers are going quickly, but she wonders if dressing like that might harm their public image. She's nearly finished, but in a moment of carelessness, the wind blows her flyers away. Noel acts quickly, using magic to gather them again. This impresses the people around them. He says the job advertised in the flyer is excellent and isn't tied to the guild. Interested, a woman snaps her fingers. If they're looking for workers, this is the perfect opportunity for her. She introduces herself as Aluma and says it will be a pleasure to work with them. Impressed by her poise, they're taken aback by her presentation. Lilia even asks if she's served a noble before, but Aluma says she's just a regular person, albeit very skilled at what she does. Noel thanks her for her application and asks if she'd like to work in the community. After thinking for a moment, she asks if she can use the kitchen, and Noel says yes. Better than explaining, she believes they should taste it for themselves. The banquet she prepared was truly impressive. Not only was it delicious, but her skill rivaled that of a royal chef. Aluma thanked them for their satisfaction. Sensing something different, they asked if she had a special skill. She said no, she just combined elements of some plants with flavorful ingredients. Noel found it ingenious and said it's a very useful recipe for adventurers. Lilia remarks that such talent is rare. Knowing this, she wants to rely on Aluma's abilities. This made Aluma grateful once again, though with a suspicious smile. Outside, life goes on as usual. There are several people in the hot springs, and Jared is negotiating potions. The kitchen is running at full speed. In the hall, adventurers are feasting. Sarah had just hunted a wild beast. Behind her, Aluma remarked that she must be used to it. She didn't even notice someone had approached her from behind. Then she asked if the person was new to the village. That individual was also a demon. Aluma asked Sarah to lower her bow as it was dangerous and the person wasn't there to fight. But Sarah wanted to know what the demon was doing in the village. Before answering, the demon asked Sarah if it was truly comfortable for demons to live in that place. Sarah explained that there they were willing to accept her. Aside from a few exceptions, one could live peacefully. Aluma asked if Sarah truly believed humans and demons could coexist, and Sarah said yes. Suddenly, she felt a very intense magical pressure. The woman in front of her had completely changed form. She said she would soon determine whether Sarah's claim about coexistence was actually true. Sarah was shocked. Standing before her was the youngest daughter of the demon king, Alice. Among his children, she was the most powerful. Sarah had no idea what Alice was doing there. The first thought that crossed her mind was the possibility of her seeking revenge. In Sarah's silence, Alice wanted to know if she was still hesitant. Alice's servant explained that Alice also sought coexistence but wanted to learn more about humans to achieve it. For that reason, she wanted to go to the village, but Sarah remained speechless. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.